welcome to How to Fix It, and happy October. Since I was a kid, one of my favorite Halloween traditions has been to watch Halloweentown every year, which I think is one of the greatest Disney Channel original movies ever made. And the sequel, Calabar's Revenge, is really good too, and personally my favorite of the series. And the third movie, Halloweentown High, while not actually taking place in Halloweentown, is still a good movie and very faithful to the ideas that the first two movies encapsulated. It's extremely rare for a movie series to just get better as it goes on, which is why it's so disappointing that the fourth entry in the Halloweentown series was such a letdown. Return to Halloweentown received a mixed reaction, which I think is unfair, because it should have been totally negative, and I knew that the first time I watched it when it premiered in 2006. There are a lot of issues with this movie, which I'll get to later, but suffice it to say, there is a lot to fix here. I think it's best if we just get started. This is Return to Halloweentown. The film centers around Marnie Piper, formerly played by Kimberly J. Brown in the last three movies, who was inexplicably recast in this film and replaced with Sarah Paxton for seemingly no reason. It's not even like Brown took a step back from acting to focus on her studies or something. She has stated in interviews that she was 100% available for the film, but Disney chose to cast Paxton in her place, which is the first and possibly the most glaring of the film's many missteps. I'd have saved that for the what didn't work category, but because it's sort of a big deal, and if you hadn't seen the fourth movie before, you'd be confused as to who this girl claiming to be Marnie is, so I figured I'd bring it up here. Where was I? Oh yeah, the basic summary. The film centers around Marnie Piper, played by Sarah Paxton, getting accepted into Witch University in Halloweentown, in place of going to a Muggle college after getting a full scholarship, along with her brother Dylan, played by Joey Zimmerman, who reluctantly agrees to go along, after their mother Gwen, played by Judith Hoag, asks him to keep an eye on Marnie, much to Marnie's annoyance. Her sister Sophie and her grandmother Aggie, played by Debbie Reynolds, are off doing magic training, which leaves Gwen with an empty nest once her kids leave. Upon her arrival at Witch U, Marnie finds that not only is the school run by three mean girls, named the Sinister Sisters, their last name being sinister as well as their natures, but magic use is outlawed, due to Marnie's actions in the previous film. Long story short, she opened up the barrier between Halloweentown and Earth, so a lot of magic students went to human colleges, so Witch University had to open enrollment to all creatures, and since not every troll and skeleton can use magic, they just banned it outright as to level the playing field. It's also the year of Halloweentown's Millennium Celebration, which will be celebrated on Halloween. Marnie has a hard time adjusting, not just because of the loss of magic, but because everything seems to be against her. Her professors, the Sinister Sisters. The only lifeline she has is Professor Periwinkle, a discount Grandma Aggie because Debbie Reynolds wasn't available or something, and so she only gets a few scant cameos. The big plot in this film centers around the Dominion. Not that one. Not that one either. Oh, come on. The Dominion is an evil organization bent on using Marnie for nefarious purposes to, you guessed it, take over Halloweentown.
Of course!
Though their plan also has an eensy bit of racism in it, since they also hate the other non-witch warlock creatures that live in Halloweentown, and want to use them as slaves. During an archaeology class, a strange box, labeled with the words S. Cromwell written on it, flies out of the ruins and into Marnie's hands, which the chancellor of the school, Dr. Goodwin, wants her very much to open. She can't, and the key is missing, so she goes to find someone who might know who S. Cromwell is. She goes to Professor Periwinkle, who tells her that she was good friends with Splendora Cromwell, along with knowing Grandma Aggie as well, but she can't tell Marnie anymore because she's not ready yet. The Sinister Sisters start manipulating Dylan, since he has a crush on them, for some reason, and Marnie starts hanging out with Ethan, formerly the son of the bad guy from the last movie, who attends Witch University, and they start having a thing together as they go on a romantic broom ride around Halloweentown. Eventually, Marnie realizes that the only way to figure out how to open the box is to go back in time to before it was buried, because time travel is totally a thing to be taken lightly, and asks for Periwinkle's help, at which she remarks that Marnie is finally ready. She sends her back a millennium, where Marnie does the whole time travel thing and runs into her future friends, like Benny and Professor Periwinkle, before discovering Splendora Cromwell, who looks identical to her because... Okay, so I can't really fault the movie for that, because Back to the Future did it with Biff and Griff, and also Seamus, Marty, and Marty Jr., and I love those movies, but it's still a really dumb trope. She discovers what the box contains, namely the gift, an amulet with the power to allow the wielder to utterly control people. Splendora doesn't want it, and so she's going to lock it away, putting the key where it will be the safest, in the future with Marnie. We also learn that Splendora's middle name is Agatha. See? We did get Grandma Aggie having a big role after all! She returns from the future and opens the box, only to have the amulet stolen by Chancellor Goodwin, who, along with Professor Grog and Silas Sinister, father of the sisters, are part of the Dominion. She's pulled into their scheme when the Sinister Sisters turn Dylan into a dog and he runs off. She tasks Ethan with tracking Dylan down, while she calls Gwen for help, along with getting her RA, a genie named Anissa, to help her figure things out. They find Dylan, but the Dominion caught him because they followed Ethan, whose father was a member of theirs until his capture at the end of Halloweentown High. She relents to their plans to cast a spell onto Halloweentown to have the witches and warlocks rule the other monsters, which will become permanent at midnight. During her coronation, she has them reverse the spell on Dylan, and using Anissa's lamp and the power of 3 Cromwells, herself, Gwen, and Dylan, they destroy the gift, and the Dominion is captured and imprisoned by Agent Periwinkle of the Halloweentown Anti-Dominion League. Yeah, that definitely should have been Grandma Aggie. Anyway, the day is saved as Marnie and the rest of Halloweentown get to go back to normal, and the Sinister Sisters lose their magic due to their father's imprisonment. Ethan reveals to Marnie that he no longer has magic, having given it up willingly when his father's was taken away, and he and Marnie walk off together as Dylan discovers that the gift wasn't actually destroyed, and was instead entrusted to him. He closes it away in a book where the S on the spine glows as the movie ends. Oh my god! The villain of the next movie is Jake the Snake Roberts! The development of Marnie's relationship with Ethan was actually pretty good. It's not entirely meshing with the third movie's version of their relationship, which wasn't romantic, but I do like it, considering that we lost Luke after the second film, and it almost feels like what a lot of people wanted for Cal with the fact that he redeemed himself, and also with the magic broom riding segment also has shades of Cody from the third movie. It's likely because of Lucas Grable's appearance in High School Musical making him a hot name for the Disney tween demographic, but it's by far one of the least offensive major changes to the narrative, and the one that I kind of approve of. The returning actors all do splendidly, especially Judith Hoag and Debbie Reynolds, as Gwen and Aggie respectively, though their lessened screen time was a major disappointment. The entire empty nest subplot that Gwen has at least messes with her overprotectiveness that she displayed in the first movie, though her sudden magic is bad again flip from the third film is jarring. It's like every other movie she flips to either hating it or loving it. I get that it's for comedic purposes, but I just wanted to pick a side already. Joey Zimmerman gives yet another great performance as Dylan, and to his credit, he does manage to act off of Sarah Paxton relatively well. Not nearly as good as the familial chemistry that he had with Brown, but serviceable enough for his performance. The film also gives Dylan a lot to do, and he gets a satisfying ending, being the one to hold on to the family's secret gift. Considering that he was the one who least wanted to be part of the magic crap, aside from Gwen, it was a good ending for him. I also liked his development that he did use magic as much as Marnie did, but not for crazy personal gain, just for reading. Which, if I can be completely honest, is totally what I would use magic or super speed for if I had it. Though his crush on Scarlet, I'll get to that in the next section. The time travel plot on the surface isn't a bad idea, especially considering that it does allow us to glimpse into the history of Halloweentown, which is an interesting premise. I could watch an entire movie where Marnie goes back in time and ends up influencing Halloweentown Back to the Future style. It's just executed really poorly since we don't get to see much of ye old Halloweentown, and I don't feel like we learned anything really new. It could have been really, really cool, considering that we got to see young Benny. We could have also seen young versions of other characters apart from Splendora and Periwinkle. And admittedly, the film does have some good jokes in it, like the Morvin, Merlin's cousin bit. I admit that got a chuckle out of me. It's stuff like that which made the first 3 films so great. How they balanced the comedy along with a really good story and great characters. And there's shades of that in this movie. Just not enough shades, in my opinion. I also do like the premise of Witch U, a magic university that let in non-magic users because of lower enrollment. It's a neat idea that I feel like they didn't really do enough with. You're traveling through another dimension, a dimension not only of sight and sound but of mind, a journey into a wondrous land, where small rectangles appear at the bottom of videos, where some can be skipped after 5 seconds, yet some can't be skipped at all. You see the signpost up ahead. Your next stop, the commercial zone. Picture, if you will, a software, one that allows you to bypass the commercial zone, but in doing so, deprives a content creator of revenue. Picture something else, a website, where, when you give a small monetary donation, even as small as this, you get to see some of that content a day early, and get to bypass the commercial zone. The choice is yours. Right off the top, the recasting. Sarah Paxton doesn't quite have the same performance as Kimberly J. Brown, and it hurts the character. She's not bad, she's just not Marnie. It's almost as if, along with the recasting, we've lost all of her character development from the last 3 films. It's like Rimmer in Series 8 of Red Dwarf, a reset back to the way she used to be. The Marnie in the 3rd film was a little inexperienced in high-level magic, but she was a mature person. This Marnie isn't, and it doesn't make sense for her not to be if she's supposed to be the Marnie from the first 3 films. I don't know how much of that can be put onto Paxton, though, because a good chunk of the characterization comes from the script, which was really bad. I'm not saying that the Halloweentown movies were cinematic masterpieces, and that the people who worked on them were auteurs, but they were good. They were smart and funny, and had some really awesome-looking monsters, and this one felt almost hollow. The loss of Sophie Piper was also a misstep, although I can't really hold it against the movie, as the actress, Emily Rosk, retired from acting following the 3rd movie to become a martial arts instructor, which is pretty damn cool. It is a low point because Sophie was one of the high points of the first 2 films, though. What I can hold against the film, however, is the fact that Debbie Reynolds doesn't play a part in the climax at all, and I think that is just disgraceful. And Splendora doesn't count, damn it. It's a glorified cameo. She appears in person once in the entire film, and then goes AWOL. She doesn't even show up at the end as a Force Ghost or anything. I'm also not such a fan of the new characters, Anissa, the Sinister Sisters, and Griff. They're just not interesting. Who's Griff, you might ask? He's a goblin, one of the non-green or hob variety, who mostly serves as comic relief and has absolutely no bearing on the story, so I left him out. It's not even like any of his comic relief is very funny anyway. And Anissa, while she's not bad, she didn't really make an impact on me, and I forgot she even existed until I rewatched the movie to do this review. Witch U is also like a discount Hogwarts. The classes, Professor Grog, it all feels like bootleg Harry Potter, which, pun not intended, goes into my next point. Having the Mean Girls rip-offs the Sinister Sisters running the school doesn't make sense. This is college. Everyone is adults. Even if you did have these three mean girls, why would they run the school? It's not high school anymore. Their power is gone. It's a big campus. I don't know if my experience is different because I didn't go away to school, but there aren't really cliques in the same way that high school has. College is not just high school part 2. I mean, hell, this entire movie feels like it was the original pitch for Halloweentown High, where instead of magical creatures in the Muggle high school, it's Marnie going to a magic boarding school. If this was to cash in on the tween demographic and try to make it feel like high school, then why was it even set at college? Just give us a movie not centered around school. The film's villains are weak as well. It's a stock evil organization that frankly isn't as interesting as Calabar, Cal, or Ethan's dad. The fact that they come out of nowhere in the opening and we know next to nothing about their motivations aside from racism, their entire conspiracy just seems stupid. And the Sinister Sisters are just 3 Regina Georges with magic that frankly come off as more annoying than they do formidable. Why did Dylan like Scarlet? It just seems so out of character for him, considering that he had the big romantic arc in the 3rd film, for him to suddenly just become lovesick in this film. They were hot and speak Latin? Good message to teach the tween demographic, guys. It's okay to love people who are literally evil as long as they're hot. We don't even get a cautionary tale thing with Dylan. He just gets turned into a dog and that's it. It just doesn't make sense for his character. Paul Birnbaum, who wrote for the 1st movie and the 3rd movie, returned as a writer in this one, so it's not like they didn't know Dylan's character arc. The movie also has problems with contradiction, i.e. the whole spells cast become permanent on Halloween are deterrents for using magic from the founding, but they only outlawed magic when other species were allowed in the previous year. I mean, I guess it is a deterrent for cheating while using magic, but you'd think they'd have a better system for that. The bit at the end of the time travel segment where Marnie gives Splendora the famous pumpkin was stupid. It was a cash-in on a line that Aggie had said in the 1st film that she had installed the pumpkin herself, but why? We didn't need to see it. If she wanted to, plant the seed, her giving Splendora a pumpkin seed and going, "You're gonna need this," would have been so much more effective and not nearly as hokey and stupid. And don't even get me started on that half-assed sequel bait at the end. If you think I want the Sinister family to be the villain again, you've got another thing coming. I'm glad it ended at 4 movies, though it probably should have ended at 3 if you ask me. How could a series that was generally really good come out with something like this? I do have a theory about it, though.
They just didn't care.
First things first, get back Kimberly J. Brown and we'll talk. Recasting an actor in a movie isn't a bad thing. The Jack Ryan movies seem to work well despite that. Same with James Bond. But recasting a character when the actress was available is unforgivable. On that same token, get Debbie Reynolds a bigger part. Why the hell isn't she a professor at Witch U? It'd give us a lot more of a punch at the end when we find out that she was working to stop the Dominion in secret. Having her show up as a hologram is frankly stupid and disrespectful. And really, Sarah Paxton as young Debbie Reynolds? Not even close. The story is salvageable. Just make it take place at an actual college and not a glorified boarding school. I think that the biggest problem with this movie is that the premise itself is inherently flawed, and so the best solution to fix it would be to not make this movie. Now, I'm not saying that there shouldn't have been a Halloweentown 4. When I saw Halloweentown High for the first time, I definitely wanted to see a sequel. That movie didn't feel like a natural endpoint, but I don't think that we should have gotten this movie as a follow-up. This film should not have been Halloweentown boarding school. It should have been Halloweentown college. None of the characters act like they're in college. They act like they're in high school. And I know that they're freshmen, but they don't act like freshmen in college. They act like high school freshmen. Get rid of the Sinister Sisters and all of the stupid Hogwarts ripoff crap. These are mature college freshmen. Show us a magic frat house or something. Nothing too adult, but make it realistic. Actually, I take back what I said about getting rid of the Sinister Sisters. Make them the heads of a sorority that Marnie wants to join, but they make it impossible for her to pledge because they don't like her. At least then, their behavior makes sense. With some revisions and a better screenwriter, I think that the basic premise of the movie could have worked. Have the film show Marnie going away to college in Halloweentown, just like the premise of the movie was supposed to be. But instead of the weird prophecy and petty clique stuff, give us a Marnie who finds herself having trouble adjusting to being away at a magic school. Have her arc in the movie be something human. Despite the fact that all she wanted her entire life was magic, she finds herself missing home. Her professors expect greatness from her because she's a Cromwell, and the heads of the sorority, the Sinister Sisters, hate her. It creates an arc that makes sense in the context of the film and informs about her character and the world she's inhabiting. Maybe some of the professors don't like that she opened the barrier between worlds. There's a lot of material there. And I mean, you have to have the crazy magic plot, so maybe you can keep in the time travel stuff and have the Dominion try to rewrite the history of Halloweentown by they themselves going back to the founding, and for some reason, Marnie is shielded from it. Maybe Grandma Aggie in her final act before being erased shields her from it and sends Marnie back in time where she meets up with Splendora, who is still a young Grandma Aggie. At least it gives a satisfactory reason for Debbie Reynolds to only have a cameo, and her character goes out on a high note. Maybe have her work with the younger counterpart of Professor Periwinkle to restore Halloweentown to its former glory. Maybe because his dad was a part of their group, Ethan manages to shield himself too, and he goes on the journey with Marnie. Maybe the other Cromwells, namely Gwen and Dylan, are taken by the Dominion as leverage against Marnie, since Cromwells always stop the bad guys in Halloweentown, as evidenced by the previous 3 films. And you have Dylan and Gwen, the 2 people who were most opposed to all of the magic stuff in the previous films, rise up and use their magic to escape and help Marnie from the sidelines. Not only would this serve as a good movie from a plot and character standpoint, but it would also be a great capstone to the series, being that it would be the final showdown for Halloweentown. And the ending could actually be quite similar to the way that the film ends normally, but because of the build-up we would have gotten from the movie, it would have had a much bigger impact than the ending had originally. Plus, by giving everyone a distinct arc, it would have made Debbie Reynolds' reduced screen time make sense, instead of hand-waving away dropped calls from parallel universes. And I'll have you know, interdimensional communications are not that finicky. Well, as long as you have a good provider. No, Maverick, you're going in and out. I can't hear you. You're breaking up. I can't hear, no. I can't, no, I didn't hear the first part because you're, Maverick. Okay, shut up for 2 seconds. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? I told him not to get straight talks in a dimensional plan. Anyway, yeah, the movie, cause it's in such a rich world, had so much potential to create a smashing finale, a perfect capstone to the series. And instead we got this. And why was that? Say it with me now. Because
They just didn't care.
And that was Return to Halloweentown, which was 88 minutes of thin plot, crappy characterization, and bad writing. It's the longest movie in the series by 4 whole minutes, But it doesn't even do anything good with those extra minutes. Between the recasting, the seeming desire to cash in on a market that doesn't care about college with a film about college, and turning what could have been a decent movie into a pile of utter nonsense, Return to Halloweentown is even worse than I remember thinking it was when I saw the premiere. It took me 3 hours to watch the movie for research because I had to keep pausing the movie to take notes. Part of me is sort of happy about the recasting, though. At least Kimberly J. Brown didn't have to take part in this travesty. The worst thing about it is that it could have been good if the people making it actually cared about the story they were telling instead of demographics. If you're a fan of Halloweentown and somehow haven't seen this movie before, avoid it at all costs. It's not worth it. A better use of your time would be to rewatch the first 3. Or, if you're in the area, go to St. Helens, Oregon, where they filmed the first movie, which turns itself into Halloweentown every October. I would say that we need another sequel to decanonize this movie, but with Debbie Reynolds passing last December, I wouldn't want there to be a Halloweentown film that doesn't feature Grandma Aggie, especially since the last one gave her a smaller role than she deserved, so I can't say that I'm clamoring for it anymore. Anyway, that's all the time we have for today. If you'd like to see more of how to fix it, you can hit that subscribe button. And if you have any comments or complaints about the video, you can put those in the comment section below. Oh, and if you want to be notified of new uploads, you can hit that bell icon. And if you enjoyed this video, show it to your friends and share it around the internet. And maybe consider supporting the show on Patreon. See you next time for a look at the first published work of an author that we haven't talked about on this show since before the first anniversary. See you then. You're traveling through another dimension, a dimension not only of sight and sound, but of mind. Your journey into a wondrous land. Okay.